Are we talking about these soundtracks or what? What's going on?
So we're gonna jump straight into our topic for this week. And we sort of talked about it on and off throughout this episode, and that's gonna be just music and gaming. We're gonna sort of touch on like how each of us really feel about music in gaming. How does it affect like our just the overall gameplay, like our memory of the game, and then we're gonna round it off with our top three tracks or favorite tracks, favorite soundtracks. So I sort of want to start off with I feel that music and gaming, it's pretty big. I sort of we put out the post on our Instagram saying, hey guys, let's talk about what's your favorite soundtracks, why it's your favorite soundtracks, what does music and gaming mean to you. And I've had a couple of good feedback from people. Talked to one person, they said that they play games, but they play games with with Spotify playing, so they're not necessarily playing the game for the music, they're playing it for the game. And to me, like if I'm playing something like Undertale, like I feel like Undertale really, resonated with me because the soundtrack is, it's so memorable, it's so good. So that, I don't know, like I feel like a game's music could make or break it for me sometimes. But what about you guys? How you guys feel about just music and gaming?
Well, I have to give a shout out to, I was looking up here, the very first game with continuous music playing is Rally X from Namco.
Ooh, wow, that's a deep cut.
You can find Rally X on just about every Namco museum that they ever release, and they're always going to release Namco Museum, rest assured. It's on Switch right now, literally. So yeah, I didn't even know that. I was just looking it up. The first game, Rally X. So I think music is a very powerful tool on all levels in all forms of media, but in gaming, especially for indie and for retro gaming, I think it's as important as graphics, really, because of the limitations of the hardware, or because of the vision of the artist, of the game developers. Like if it's something kind of simple, sound is what carries it. Yep. Sound is what made old school Metroid 2, like on Game Boy. That's what made that like frightening and scary to me. It was weird. It sounded alien. It sounded strange. Sound is what kept me grooving on like Contra, because Contra was a super hard game, but the music keeps you going. It's like, all right, this is like shooting people music. Okay, let's go. Let's, you know what I mean? Like it keeps you driven.
Yeah.
And it's weird because a lot of those games were very abstract with their stories. The whole lore of it might have just been in like a manual. So the music kind of told a story in its own way. I think that goes for all games all the way up to now. Celeste is a great example, like we were talking about earlier. Great music. But yeah, I mean, I think for a long time, music was kind of like the only thing. A lot of people, anyone in the world could probably hum the Super Mario Brothers theme for you, or Tetris or Sonic or whatever. Like everybody knows those. Everybody even knows Halo, and that's not even that old in the scheme of video games. You know what I mean? It just goes a really long way to connect sound to the feeling of playing a game, to the visuals, to the memories of playing these games. So yeah, that's just that for me.
Yeah, Rod, James, how you guys feel?
Yeah, so I mean, I have to echo a lot of what Herb just said. I mean, for me personally, when I think of like the top soundtracks, for me, they always evoke a feel, whatever the game is or about. The best soundtracks for me has always managed to dredge up those feelings that I had while playing the game, while I'm actually playing it, or if I'm searching for a soundtrack on Spotify or YouTube, or I'm listening to the music outside of the game. Which, if I'm listening to your game soundtrack outside of your game, I really fucking like it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's a big thing. So, yeah, it's always given me, you know, that feeling. One of the best, I know you guys already know, like one of my favorite soundtracks of all time in gaming is definitely the Jet Set Radio soundtrack, both games.
Yeah.
I mean, those soundtracks, Hideki Nagamura is a bona fide genius to me, in the fact that he not only mixed his own compositions, but he used existing songs as well, like to complement his original stuff. And they all are, like, so many of them are funky and fit in, even if they're not all hip hop, like they're like they're pop or funk or something that gives you that feeling of rebellion, freedom,
Yes.
youth.
Right, the
Like,
future. Yeah,
exactly, the future. Like that's exactly what those soundtracks mean in the grand scheme of things, whether I'm playing the game or not. And that's such a powerful thing. And like Herb said, you know, music itself is a tool that is potent, like to any form of media. So yeah, what about you, James?
Well, just to kind of switch things up a little bit, I definitely have to agree that, you know, the soundtrack to these games are very key to a lot of experiences, especially on the older side of things. But I think about even moving a bit further into the modern type of video games. I think about the sports games even, and how impactful the soundtracks have been for not just the game itself, but for the careers of so many musicians that have been featured on them. Like, from a sports fan, everybody remembers the Madden soundtrack, and you get like Blink 182 feeling this. Put me in like a whole different genre of music altogether. I'm like, it leads me down a rabbit hole to discover. Or I even think about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
How legendary.
Right, legendary and instrumental those soundtracks were in just the overall gameplay loop.
Yeah, Tony Hawk kind of got like an entire generation of kids who didn't know punk rock into punk rock.
Yeah, it made it
Like-
dope again.
Yeah, for real. Like it was like all of them were good, but those first two Tony Hawks, it was just like all of a sudden, I wanted to take that CD out the console and put it in the car and listen to it. You know?
Right.
And you could. That was the cool thing.
Right, you could actually go and find them on LimeWire or whatever.
Yeah.
Was hot back then, and like make your own mixes. But yeah, like even outside of just regular composed music, I even think about sports games. Obviously benefits from a lot of them. The WWE games where you could like make your own themes and have like your own music play to your entrances. It just really sold the experience that you are that wrestler and you're finally living out that dream. Because I mean, of course, everybody knows like the Marios and the Zeldas and Tetris. And like I can play some of the songs in front of my mom, and she'll be like, "Oh, that's so and so," and she is one, terrible at video games, and two, does not play them at all. But yeah, man, music is key to a lot of these experiences, from Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Mario, Persona. God, Persona 5. I actually went and bought that. I want to get a vinyl of that soundtrack. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I just, there was a time where I really got away from listening to the music because of the ability to play your own. Like the 360 era, I played my own stuff over the music all the time. Like Dead Rising 3. It was just like cool to put on some Disturbed, which I'd find from some of my friends, and then just like murder zombies to like 10,000 Fists or The Sickness or whatever. And it's just like, it's really cool to see how those type of things can really come together.
I sort of feel like there was a time where some games, like the music was there, but like you said, like certain games, like I guess it sort of adds to it where you could add your own music or listen to your own music. So
that was a whole thing when the first original Xbox dropped. It was like, wait a minute, you can rip your music CDs to this thing now? That was like a whole thing. I remember getting games specifically on Xbox just so I could listen to my own. Like, for instance, not that they don't have, this has to be said, but the Grand Theft Auto series has incredible soundtracks.
San Andreas. Oh.
Yeah. And then on top of that, it was like when they dropped 3 and Vice City in a single pack on Xbox, and it was like you can listen to the radio if you want, or you can put your own tracks now. It was just like I was like done, sold. I got it for that.
What was the other game? It was like a competitor to those. True Crime.
True Crime, yeah.
True Crime. They had a very similar feature on there too. My cousins would put on like Trillville, just ride around LA, just like cruising or whatever. It was so good.
All right,
Chris,
so
what about you, man?
yeah. Well, I was gonna say so moving on. Like, let's go ahead and jump to, I guess, and it's hard to
it's too
choose.
hard, guys.
Yeah, it's hard to choose your favorite soundtrack because I think Rod, you said this earlier. You could list like a couple. But as soon as we stop talking, or as soon as like you really sit down and think about it, you're like, "Damn, I completely forgot about this game. I completely forgot about that game." So just know that what we're listing, at least for me, what we're listing here is not going to be like our definitive, list of our favorites. I feel like for me, it's going to be like my top 3 in no order.
Okay.
Like off the top of my head, type of thing. Like I guess something that like I can instantly like think of that type of thing. So I'll start off. I think I have to shout out like the original Sonic the Hedgehog games. Like that, the music in those games, like it's as soon as I get something where as soon as I can hear it, like I know exactly what game it's from, everything. Like it's really good music. And it's sort of like it's along that lines of like how like you said, like everyone knows what the Mario theme song sounds like. Everyone knows what Green Hill Zone sounds like. So that's gonna be it for me. In particular, I want to shout out Sonic 3 and Knuckles. That combo. That I feel like I think I spent the most time on the game, so I feel like that's why that hit so hard for me. I think a next game or next franchise I want to shout out is Persona. So for me, Persona 4 is what got me into the franchise. Persona 4 has a great soundtrack, but Persona 5, by far, like I sort of wish I recorded my reaction to hearing the first, hearing the theme song for the battle music for the first time. It gets so good.
That's my alarm.
Nice.
Seriously is. That's a wakes move every morning. I'm ready.
Yeah. And then I guess my last would be man, I mean I sort of said it before. I guess it's like an honorable mention, but Streets of Rage is there. Streets of Rage 2 in particular. But I guess my official 3 would be Metal Gear Solid. Like that's another franchise that just each game had iconic music. If I would have to choose my favorite theme song from a game, it'd either have to be like the original Metal Gear Solid theme song or from Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater.
Snake Eater, yeah.
Snake Eater is pretty good.
Snake Eater, that song just slaps. Like it's good. But that's me. What about you guys? Rod, what you got?
Oh man, you had to come to me first, man. Yeah.
I got a lot, man. When you're ready, let me know.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and go to her first because I'm compiling mine.
All right. So I've got games, and then I'm gonna talk about producers and composers, I guess. So without a doubt, Jet Set Radio, absolutely. Those two soundtracks, I mean, to this day, I have an old buddy that I call up, and when we answer the phone, he's like, "Fly," and I'm like a butterfly. Like he knows, like we're on that level. Wow. Okay, it's hard to know where to start. So I want to give a big shout out first to Tetsuya Mizuguchi.
Oh yeah.
This guy is behind Space Channel 5, behind Rez, Lumines, Meteos, Every Extend Extra, Child of Eden. Really just like incredible visionary of video gaming. All of his games involve music in some way. They all are kind of, surreal music kind of like visual connected games. I mean, they're the kind of games that like if you play it with some other kind of music, you are missing the game.
Yeah, I mean, music is literally driving the mechanics.
Yeah, and often you're making the music by doing whatever you need to do in the game.
Right.
Really fantastic stuff. Also, Yuzo Koshiro, of course, for doing Streets of Rage. A lot, it's years ago now, but what a lot of people don't realize today is that the very first Streets of Rage was like basically the first time in a video game that video game music wasn't really like used, if you know what I'm saying. Like, it was the first time where like club music and music that you go out and hear at places where people are dancing and, that music was translated into the Genesis, into this game. And it totally kind of like influenced a lot of future beat makers and producers. It changed the whole concept of like, that was the kind of game where like I would leave it on in an area where, I wouldn't get hit just so I could listen to the music. I would go to the sound test just to put it on, just to have something while I cleaned the house when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
It was just good. It was just like really good. It didn't sound like chiptune. That's the thing. It sounded like samples.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was like the first time I remember hearing like what sounded like actual music. Not that chiptune. You know what I'm saying though. It felt like actual produced music, like you would get on a cassette or on a CD.
Mm-hmm.
So big shouts to him. I also wanna bring up Kenji Yamamoto. He is the guy that does most of the Metroid music. Almost all of them. Not the very first one, but all the Primes, Zero Mission, Fusion, Hunters, all that. Metroid Prime just the very first game alone, that soundtrack like moves me. Like it's like it makes you feel like you're there. It has great instrumentation, but there's also like organic sound effects, like natural sounds going on in the music that he uses as parts of the beats. It just amazing stuff. I cannot wait for Metroid Prime 4. I don't care how long it's going to take. I want it. I also want to give a shout to Ko Otani. This is the guy that has done the music for tons and tons of anime, including Gundam Wing.
Ooh, nice.
And Zatch Bell and Outlaw Star and a bunch of other anime. I mean, like an endless list of anime.
Yeah. Just keep naming all the greats. Why don't you? Oh man.
He does the soundtrack to Shadow of the Colossus, and I have to say, for a game with so much time spent in silence as you explore the land and try to figure out where these huge monsters are to kill them, when you come across certain areas, or when you actually come across a Colossus, like all of the sudden this huge sweeping orchestra like just surrounds the whole scene, and it's like breathtaking. It's just like it's like something in like a, I don't know, it feels like, like something some famous white dude with like a wig on who's deaf would have wrote on his piano like 300 years ago or something. I mean, it's like it's just like, damn, like I've never been so I've always liked classical music, but I feel like the combination of that with a game where you're doing something that, where the action suggests that kind of epicness, it just really complements it really well. There's still tracks to this day. I can't remember all the names of them, but like I downloaded the Shadow of the Colossus soundtrack like when it came out way back on like whatever service was able to download it on, and have not stopped listening to it. It is amazing. And then that's already a bunch. So two more. There's a guy named David Wise. He is the main composer for the company Rare. He has done everything from Battletoads to Donkey Kong Country to Star Fox to freaking Snake Pass and Yooka-Laylee. Big, like I'm such a fan. Like so many of those songs from Banjo-Kazooie and Diddy Kong and all that N64, that whole time of Rare being on top of the world, like those just like they're a lot of times they're silly and they're kind of whimsical, but they were just perfect. It was like it was like they stole a dude who was making Saturday morning cartoon music and threw him into video games. You know, I don't know. It just those always like big shouts to him. He's still making music. I mean, Ukulele, the newest one just came out this year. He's still doing the music for Rare all the way back to 1987. And then as far as well, to be honest, this past year, a video game soundtrack that I have listened to again and again and again. I play it in my car. I play it in the shower. I listened to it yesterday. Is The Messenger.
Okay.
The Messenger is incredible. It has probably one of the best chiptune soundtracks I've ever heard ever. The game has equal parts 8-bit and 16-bit visuals and sound. So the soundtrack is a double album where it's on Spotify and everything. The whole first half is 8-bit, the whole second half is 16-bit. It's just awesome. It's pulsing, it's driving, it makes you feel like a badass ninja. It brings back this like feeling, this idea that we all have in our minds of the 80s, like that sort of Kung Fury sort of, you know, kind of like Terminator, kind of just like that feel of like everything's in neon and I have a gun and I have like no shirt on and it's the 80s, like fuck yeah, you know, like
what a time.
You know what I mean? Like yes. I don't know what you call that, but that's when I think of the 80s in my mind. It's like everybody had like no shirt and like wild colors and everybody has like guns and like crazy cars and shit, you know. I don't know.
That's not playing Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I mean pretty much, yeah. So yeah, I mean I'm missing so many. There's so many more out there. Of course, I want to say Third Strike because I think it has the best fighting game soundtrack.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that was around the time of Jet Set Radio, where everything was kind of like a lot of video game music was kind of moving into like breakbeat and drum and bass and all that. Yeah, I mean, there's so much more. I mean, we could go on forever, but there you go. Those are mine.
Yeah. And I want to throw in because I'm already starting to do it. I want to swap out Metal Gear, this guy, and I want to put in Undertale because that game has just moved me so much. It's Toby Fox, you're a genius. So who's next? Who's got their list?
James, are you prepared?
I've got some that can like freestyle off the top of my head. So well, I've been trying to think of how I want to do this, and I think I want to try to take this by console because I was thinking generation, but that's too many. So just to give you guys some more time, let's start with the first console I ever played, Game Boy. My favorite soundtrack off of the Game Boy goes to Pokemon. Nice. I was gonna say Tetris at first, but there's just something about walking out of Pallet Town, walking into a Pokemon Center, your first like rival battle even, or just first encounter. There's just so many like that's one of those hallmark soundtracks that everybody just kind of knows. Yeah, that I'm like, I'm ready. We're gonna go fight. Let's do it. Me and you, like, battle our rats. Yeah, let's do it. I'm here. And it's just something about that soundtrack that's always stood out. Super Mario Brothers 3 for the NES.
Yes.
Love that soundtrack. We played that recently when I was up there in Atlanta for you guys. Had a couple minutes with that, and it just brought back so many memories of sitting in my grandma's house with nothing else to do. Because, like, it's grandma's house. But just, like, lock myself into that room playing those games so many hours and hours and hours.
I still miss the little jingle when you die where it's like, ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum.
Right! And speaking of death tunes, giving Mario more credit, Super Mario World on the SNES.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone knows that. That's probably the most famous death song that I could think of. Followed closely by Donkey Kong Country for their soundtrack on there. Probably two of my favorite soundtracks, period. Jumping up to the 64, Banjo-Kazooie. That was going to be my number one.
Really?
Yeah.
That's an amazing soundtrack.
I'll boot that soundtrack up right now and just listen to it. I think they just did so much fantastic work with just the sounds and how it's all one continual song, but it'll shift to different instruments depending on the area that you're in. It's like you dive underwater, you get that underwater feel, or you walk over to Freezy Peak? I think things get like a little bit
Freezy
Peak, yeah, something like that. And it gets so much like lighter and you get that wintertime feel, but it's still that same doom 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 doom, just like pushing you through it. I love that soundtrack. God, Banjo-Kazooie was so good. Let's see. If I were to go for PlayStation's difficult, but I think I would have to get at the Spyro. I wouldn't say it's the best soundtrack out there, but it was just one of the most iconic ones for me in that time of my life. Love Spyro's music. Let's see, PlayStation 2. I was gonna go with a Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, but then I remember about everything else that came out on PlayStation, and there were so many great soundtracks on there between the Tony Hawk series, Def Jam, Fight for New York, Maddens of that time, maybe original soundtracks though. Final Fantasy X. I really enjoyed Final Fantasy X as a game, so that soundtrack sticks with me a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, Nobuo Uematsu, he just does great work with that series in general. Like,
Yeah, and he's been going forever too. That's another big one.
That's true.
He's like, I mean, the dude's like almost 60. I mean, he has like 18 games under his belt. It's crazy.
Yeah.
How does he coming up with this stuff? I don't understand. Honorable mention for PlayStation 1, Final Fantasy 7, One Winged Angel.
Yeah.
Still like strikes fear sometimes. I love that song. Let's see, I'm on PlayStation 3 now. In that era, PlayStation 3, Final Fantasy 13. A lot of people didn't like that game, but I really enjoyed the soundtrack to Final Fantasy 13.
Cool.
Wait, 13 that's the RPG, right? I mean the online RPG, right?
No, that's
Nope.
14.
No, that's 14.
Oh, okay.
Like,
That's 11 and 14.
Yeah. 13 is the one with like the 30-hour tutorial that everybody hated.
Yeah.
but
Oh,
the music was fun.
I buried that to the back of my mind. I remember now.
The thing I remember the Leona Lewis song from that game.
Yeah.
Leona Lewis, what happened to her?
She bled all the way out.
Damn.
Oh. Is that a? I just don't understand. Is that a?
Her hit song was called "Bleeding Love."
Oh, okay.
Remember?
I was like, that is really
She
dark.
keeps bleeding love.
Okay, I was like, that is
that was savage.
that is
But I love
savage. My God. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Favorite soundtrack on the Wii? I'm cheating here, but Super Smash Bros.
Oh, sure.
It's unfair, but just even their original songs for that game, so good. Like nobody knew Latin in college, but everybody learned it for that song. Let me see. What system am I on now?
I think we're close to current gen. I think.
Yeah.
I think I do have a few. That I'll just.
Dreamcast Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Adventure 2.
That soundtrack actually was pretty good back in the day.
Crush 20? Yes.
Yeah, Pumpkin Hill is actually good today. I'm not gonna lie.
I just played that the other night, so it's fresh in my mind. And rest assured, there were like many laughs by me and in the chat over the lyrics of that song.
Oh man, Pumpkin Hill is. I will actually defend that today. Like genuinely, I actually really like that song, and I will even give props to Unknown from Emmy. Like I actually think that's a really cool. So like the one from 1 though, the one from 2, I don't know what they were doing with that, but the first one is actually kind of solid, and I enjoy it. Like even if I don't love Sonic Adventure, the game, like today, I will say that they did right by the soundtrack. Like every single character has like their own style of music.
Theme. Yeah.
I really appreciated that.
That's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's like a beautiful level of camp, because it's like some of it's a little hokey, but they do it in a way that's so earnest that you're like, yeah, man, yeah, like like you get into it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I do have some. I know we're gonna wrap up here shortly, but I wanted to definitely. I mean, I don't think any of these lists could be complete without some Mario title on there, and I think you guys have named them already. But definitely Mario. We already talked about Jet Set. Herb, you mentioned Shadow of the Colossus. I mean, it's classic. I think you put it beautifully. A recent one that I think deserves to be in an all-time category is Nier Automata. what they do in that game is really stellar. They actually one of my favorite things that any soundtrack can do is weave the narrative themes throughout the actual music itself, and that's something that they do consistently with Nier's soundtrack. There's a lot of orchestral sort of kind of choral singing going on. Like it has a very epic feel to it. So when things are super serious, you get that vibe. When things are a little more playful, like when you're in the robot village for the first time, like it has a kind of like a jovial sort of tone to it. Like it's extremely varied, something that I very much appreciate. Definitely a modern game that has an all-timer soundtrack. And I think Halo deserves to be in that conversation. We sort of mentioned it earlier, but I don't know if we really got into it. Marty O'Donnell is, I think, right up there with like a Mizuguchi or a Umetsu. Like I think, like he pioneered, I think, what console shooters could sound like. I don't think that there was many other shooters with such I don't want to say eclectic, but like sort of a very grounded take on with this kind of genre behind it. So like there's obviously everyone knows the monks, right? Like from the main theme, but he managed to do a ton of other things. Like he incorporated heavy drums in his tracks that gave you a very like military style feeling. So it felt like you were actually doing this, but just like you were saying with Metroid, Herb, it gives it like an alien kind of unfamiliar feeling. That I really like. Exactly. Something else I think is really great, and I think the studio puts out fantastic work with each and every single game they do, but easily the best one is definitely Supergiant with Bastion. Bastion has like top tier soundtrack goodness going on. Darren Korb, I actually have a CD with Darren Korb's signature on it.
Nice.
Like it is one of my most prized possessions. I love it so much. What I love about that soundtrack is that, with Bastion, it's sort of like a neo-Western kind of aesthetic to it, and that is prevalent throughout the soundtrack for that game. And you get sort of like some Once Upon a Time in the West, like kind of Clint Eastwood sort of vibes with that soundtrack. And I really appreciate it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so definitely wanted to shout that out really quickly. And my personal list would not be complete without the inclusion of Phoenix Wright. I mean,
ooh, nice.
The amount of, or the lack of dialogue in that game is very apparent. It's a visual novel, so music is literally carrying it. And you get no shortage of that at all. As soon as you press the objection button and you are about to call somebody on their shit, that objection theme starts playing. You start, you get up, you're like, oh yeah, you're fucking lying, and I know exactly how. Like it's just some really good, like you just know that shit's going down. They do a really good job with that, and one of the things that is special about this soundtrack as well is that it iterates on itself. So like as you progress through the series, it starts simple. Like the main theme for the game starts very simple, and then maybe in the second game they'll add strings, and maybe on the third one they'll add drums, and like they managed to kind of quote unquote modernize the theme with each successive entry. It actually kind of reminds me of what they have continued to do with the Mario games as they've progressed, and I think Odyssey was a really good example of that. So yeah, Phoenix Wright definitely a plus plus, but that's I think on my top tier list.
All right, so I have another addition to my list.
Yeah, me too. I got like 5 more.
All right. So I would completely beat myself up for not mentioning this, but the Destiny franchise, by far, dope soundtrack. Like that's something that like I still have like the soundtracks. Like I bought the soundtracks on Apple Music, and it's something that like randomly will pop up while I'm working out. And like just I feel like it's just the memories of like going through like the Vault of Glass all night just to get the helmet that I had 6 of, I think just memories of stuff like that. I think that's why it holds so dear to me. But I just want to throw that in. Destiny, has a really good soundtrack.
I also want to throw in, I can't believe I didn't mention it, but basically pick a Mega Man game and you've got a good soundtrack.
Ooh, god damn, I forgot about Mega Man.
Mega
Yes!
Man, Capcom had a lot of great soundtracks on a lot of different systems and different games, but primarily I think back in the day, I mean it's toe and toe for a lot of people, but I think when I think of like old school retro gaming and music, I think Konami, but in the case of Capcom, Mega Man stands alone. Like, I mean, fantastic 8-bit soundtracks, and even the newer Mega Mans, even the later ones, the X's and the Legends and all that, all of that has been good. Whenever I get a chance, there's a band from Athens, Georgia, called Bit Brigade. They come to town a couple times a year. They do some cons, and their whole thing is they have a guy on stage speedrunning a classic game like Mega Man 2 or Metroid or whatever, and they are a metal band, and they play the music and all of the themes and everything in real time as the guy speedruns it.
What? That's dope.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. So, the character selection screen, the game over screen, like the continue, the password screen, like they do all of it as he's doing it. So if he fucks up, then they start the song over again, It's really, really cool. Go see Bit Brigade if you ever get a chance. Their shows are like $15. They almost always play at the Earl. There's a couple different bands, around the country doing that sort of thing, but these guys, I have to say, do it really, really well. And even though I'm not like necessarily the biggest metal fan, when you hear specifically Mega Man and also Contra in metal form, it's like, wow, this music was like, wow, this was like how this was written. Like this sounds like what it was. They just couldn't make it sound that way because it was, because of the technology. So they made it. The 8-bit kind of took on its own feel, but underneath all that, it's really, I mean, it's fucking metal.
Nice.
So, yeah, Mega Man for sure. That whole series.
Mega Man 2 is their #1 video right now.
Right on.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
Yeah. Definitely worth watching. The speedrunners that they get are good and do a great job. And there's a lot of little moments in the crowd where people are like bashing their head and like jumping all over the place. And then there's moments where like it's very unlike a normal, rock concert where, you're in this little room and everybody's crowded, but everybody's like dead still and just watching.
Yeah.
Like just watching the guy like go through it and trying to rock onto the band, but trying not to miss the good parts where he beats the boss in like 10 seconds,
Yeah.
So it's really cool. Anyway, check them out. Mega Man, definitely some of the top soundtracks. I would probably say Mega Man 2 or 3.